So having selected our pedal options and our footwear options, let's see how things start to affect the ride from the ground up and see where footwork plays a part. We're going to start with the basic, the core position for riding your bike, and the fundamental way in which your body mass interacts with your bike or should interact with the bike. Remembering it's a push bike, not a pull bike, we're going to look at how setting your feet up correctly will help you master trail, control the bike, and use your body mass as a positive influence on the bike rather than it being conveyed around like a sack of spuds bouncing around kind of on the edge of control and doom. So when we set ourselves on our bike in our ready position, ideally we want a nice solid stable platform. Level crank arms, front crank arm is always likely to be slightly higher than the rear one, but dropping those heels in as we've just looked at is going to give us a far greater level of control and allow us to use the physics of rotating masses to drive the bike. Really important at this stage though to consider the equal pressure on both feet. It's very common to find riders have foot dominance, where even though their cranks are relatively level and their heels are dropped, they'll be favouring either their front leg or slightly their back leg. And obviously this doesn't give us a particularly stable platform when the trail below us starts to feed energy into the bike at higher levels. On the flat you might get away with that, but once we start hitting bumps, our feet can start rotating forward or backwards. And that is going to launch our body mass forward or backward unexpectedly. You are going to move around on the bike, but it's because you've chosen to. You want to be where you want to be on the bike, not where you've been thrown. So sorting out foot dominance is a really good idea. Catch it early, practice just recognising whether you are suffering and then dealing with it and getting used to getting equal pressure through your feet. An easy way to do that is as you roll through just around your car park as you're getting ready to ride, is perhaps to just have a roll through going up onto your toes, down onto your heels, up onto your toes, down onto your heels. Rotating the pedal axle, not the crank arms, and just getting the feel for the heel dropped position, but also making sure that there's even pressure on both pedals. The other aspect of foot dominance is not your fore and aft rolling forward and backwards unexpectedly as the pedals move forward or backwards, the crank arms rotate forwards or backwards, but you're side to side. If you've got a lot more weight on one foot than the other, you're going to be causing the bike to lean over. The bike won't be leaning over because you'll compensate with pressure on your hands. So in fact you might not recognise that you've got foot dominance because your bike is upright, but there's a little way to check against that and put a little check and balance in there to check that your feet are level, and that's just by going up onto your fingertips, which we're not going to do on the trail, but taking the pressure off your hands completely and seeing how stable the bike remains. If Josh was suffering from foot dominance here, the bike would lurch from one side to the other as he took the pressure off his hands. While we're on the subject of hands and feet, you'll read various ideas about the balance between hands and feet. The bike is designed to carry your mass around the bottom bracket. The majority of your weight in your core ready position should be through your feet. That isn't to say that you're going to load the front end and the bars up with pressure at certain times, but you're starting from a more neutral point. If 50% of your weight is already on your hands, your feet are already rotating forward off the pedals. And before you've even introduced any resistance to the front wheel or gradient, you're already going to have too much weight on your hands. I want to set myself up heavy on my feet, light on my hands, so energy through the front end of the bike dissipates rather than shaking me around, and add pressure when I choose to rather than already be fully preloaded and not be able to push into the front and make much of a difference when it matters. So in terms of cruising on the flat in your ready position with your body mass centered over the bike, we can see how crucial or how important footwork can become in terms of engagement with the bike and how your mass drives down and through the bike under rotation, as we've looked at before. Obviously going up, your feet play a part and your footwork plays a massive part as well. Clipped in, it can be quite tempting to pedal in a very toe down position, so that the entire pedal stroke, my toe is pointing downward. And although I'm clipped in and I can pull against the pedal slightly, I really want to be pushing against the pedal for longer. So across the top of my pedal stroke I want to make sure my heel is dropped. push, 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 and at the bottom catch, and that push becomes pull. In that way I can generate power for a much longer cycle through the pedal stroke, rather than just stamping down and then a little bit of pull up with a cleat. I still, even though I'm clipped in, should engage in some articulation of my ankle as I pedal. So don't just rely on the fact that you're clipped in and not drop your heel. Drop that heel in. You can push for longer. So I can be pushing, 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 pushing all the way through. As I get to the bottom, I'm going to drop my toe, pull, 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 and then switch from toe to heel. So your feet should toe to heel, toe to heel, and you'll generate power for far longer. Your pedal will be far more efficient. One of the negatives perhaps of a cleated shoe is it allows you to feel that you're creating more power, but not as efficiently, even though you're not using your feet correctly in the pedal cycle. Watch the roadies on the tour, you'll still see that articulation. It's not all about toe down, toe down, toe down with the saddle jacked up here. In terms of creating power, it's about a push, which uses big muscles. We can all squat far much more than we can pull in. Your power there, your big muscles are being used for longer. We're still going to use the calf, hip flexor, hamstring to pull back on the pedal, but at the same time as you're doing that, the big muscles are working on the other leg. There are many scenarios in which there's going to be resistance, increased resistance to your bike rolling down a trail. Unfortunately, there are a few that are going to increase the resistance to you as well. So it's very easy to overtake your bike. Over rotation, over the bars. Magazines are full of injured blokes showing off their wounds from going over the bars, but we can eliminate that by setting our feet up correctly, or help to eliminate that to a higher level by working our feet properly. Old school thinking would be, say, as you approach that log, would be to flick the back wheel up and over by pulling up on your pedals. There is no need to do that. What we need to do is allow the back wheel to rise by down unweighting or softening our legs. But with the heels dropped, it engages the pedal more into your foot as you go over than if you tried to hop up and over by lifting your weight up and forwards to lighten the back end of the bike. So as we watch Josh come through this section, and this is a fairly large obstacle to find mid-trail for sure, it's going to offer quite a lot of resistance to the front wheel, which we're going to get by pushing through, but it's the back wheel that we're concerned about here. And as I say, there is no need to lift up with cleated shoes in order to stay engaged with the bike and get the back wheel up and over. It's simply a case of dropping the heel as you push through, softening the legs and allowing the back wheel to rise. Increased engagement with the bike rather than decreased engagement with the bike. Do you want to try and hop your back wheel over there, Josh, with your flats? If Josh applies the old school of hopping the back wheel, so hopping your way up and forwards and using your feet to pull the back wheel up in the air, as we can see, is probably not the best idea. Now that was on the flat with a relatively large block in the trail, but if you're on a gradient, that pivot point of the front wheel is even closer to you, the wheelbase is even shorter, so it's even easier to go over the bars. Josh, to be fair, didn't have any intention of going over the bars then. He was going to demonstrate how your feet might slightly disengage from the pedal when that sort of obstacle is attacked in the wrong manner. But it's a good example of what not to do, and hopefully settles the argument of whether you should hop your way up and forward or you use your footwork to drive your weight back slightly, soften with the pedal and the bike engaging with you rather than using your mass to pull the back wheel up and over. We're going to push, and that push requires good footwork.